Well, hello and welcome everyone. I am Gustavo Tolosa, your webinar host for today. You may have seen me before interviewing other several doctors and dietitians and chefs before. And today I have the privilege of interviewing a friend of mine who has had a tremendous success story and with a whole food plant-based diet, not without any ups and downs. And that's what I think is so important, that people see that we're all humans and we're not perfect, but we know, because we've gone through all of this, we have some really valuable strategies to share with you. And Kristen certainly does. So I'm not going to take a lot of time from her at all. I just want to welcome you and to just invite you to watch once a month my program that is called The Pianist and the Chef. But today I want to welcome Kristen Bummer, and it's all yours. So welcome, Kristen. How are you
Thank
doing
you.
today?
Good. I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's always fun to talk to you.
Yes, yes, this is great. I have not done a webinar with you, so this is the first, and
Yeah.
hopefully not the last. So,
Right. We'll see.
um, no, no. But I know that people have registered and are attending our live webinar here because you have very valuable information and you have some freebies to give away, which
I
is
do.
always welcome. So just tell us a little bit what led you first to the whole food plant-based diet, and any kind of background information you want to give us about you.
Sure. I'd be happy to. So I actually was cruising along pretty good in my life until about 32. And up until that point, even through that point, I was really active and pretty fit and involved in different sports and things through high school and college. And weight was not ever really a problem for me, wasn't a concern. And until I hit my late 20s and early 30s, and all of a sudden, I couldn't just go to the gym and work off the donuts that I was eating. And so I started to be more conscious about my diet. And at that phase, I started to really focus on lean meat. So lots of chicken and fish and not fried things and, minimizing junk food and things like that. So I thought I was doing pretty well, but I was still always battling weight and I was never really where I wanted to be. I was really frustrated by that. So I sort of had feelers out already, and somebody had talked to me and just mentioned this book called The China Study that talked about the link between dairy and cancer. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean dairy cancer? I don't even know what you're talking about. So I read the book cover to cover, and by the end of it, I had decided that we were going to be vegan. And I say we because my darling husband was right on board with me every step of the way, which helped it to be so much easier. So we decided to go straight to vegan and did really well. And that was actually right before Forks Over Knives even came out. So I was just waiting anxiously for that documentary to be released, but I was already following that program. And before I started doing anything, I wanted to take it seriously. And I have a scientific background and I wanted to really treat it like a true experiment. And so I went into the doctor to get my before stats, right? My status. And so I was surprised when I walked in and he said that I was 15 pounds heavier than I'd been my last visit. And when they took my blood pressure, it was 140 over 90. And my blood pressure had never been that high before. Although I had seen it climbing bit by bit and was concerned about it, all of a sudden it's higher than it's ever been. And they handed me a script to take blood pressure pills, and I knew enough that I would be on those for the rest of my life if I went down that path. And I knew that they wouldn't actually cure the disease. So I asked, as if I needed his permission, I asked my doctor if I could just try this plant-based thing that I had just heard about and I was really committed to. And he said, yeah. but I'll give you 6 months. And if you come back here in 6 months with the same blood pressure, then you're going to take this script and you're going to start those pills. Well, my father had been on high blood pressure pills since he was 19. Everybody in my family has high cholesterol, high blood pressure, lots of overweight and obesity. Lost all my grandparents to heart-related issues. And there's diabetes too, and cancer a little bit. So kind of run the gamut with this not so great health history. And he said, my doctor said, some people just have bad genes. You're doing all the right things, and some people just have bad genes. Sorry, honey. Okay. So I decided to try this plant-based thing that I'd heard about. And I went all in. I followed all the recommendations from Forks Over Knives. I was reading Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease by Dr. Esselstyn and following all the recommendations that I could find. So I switched my diet overnight to whole food plant-based. I did really well. And I lost all the excess weight in about 5 weeks, but it only took 3 weeks for my blood pressure to come back to normal. And so I scheduled an appointment to go back to the doctor at the 4-week mark so I could show off a little bit. I'm not afraid to show off sometimes. And so I strolled in there with my lab work in hand. I already knew the results. I just had them done a few days ago. Cholesterol was normal. My triglycerides were normal. My fasting blood sugar, totally normal. And my blood pressure in the optimal range. I was like so excited, not just because I had done this thing, but because I had a future in front of me that was really scary. I mean, at 32, to be battling high blood pressure and weight that I couldn't control, even though I was never obese, it was beyond my control. And I hated that feeling. It was just felt awful to me to feel like I was just being pushed down this path that I didn't want to go down. And I was so thankful and relieved that I found another way. And by the way, in that process, I had made all of these changes with my food alone. I had been doing things like P.L.A.N.T.S and Beachbody workouts, and I was working out actively at least 6 days a week. And I was doing all that to try to get the results because I was eating this food that I unknowingly was working against me. And so when I changed my diet, I didn't have to do that anymore. And so I stopped for a while. I got back to it eventually just for fun, really. When I started to feel better, I wanted to exercise and I wanted to start doing more things. But I didn't do it to lose weight. I lost weight in the kitchen and then get fit in the gym. So I did really well, like I said, and I wish that that was just the end of the story. But if it was, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you because I had some struggles after that. I think I rode along pretty well for a few years, actually. And then I reached a chapter in my life where everything just got turned upside down. And in a very short span of time, I found myself selling my business, selling our house, building a new house. And we moved into our new house on my due date when I was pregnant with our child. And so life was beyond crazy already. And then bringing home a new baby was crazier still. And at the end of my pregnancy, I started to have some really weird things pop up for me, like I'm never going to get to go to Starbucks again. So I better go now and just get it all in before the baby comes, right? It was like Starbucks nesting. I was just doing all the things that I thought I was never going to get to do. So that pulled me into junk food. And the stress that was looming kept me going to junk food. And 6 weeks after our daughter was born, we found out that my father-in-law had pancreatic cancer. And this was like life-changing, to say the least. And I was postpartum. I was a complete mess. And then only 6 weeks after that, he passed away. And so this whole time was just like unbelievably stressful. And it was just one thing after the next, and suddenly my diet that had been such a priority in my life was like way on the back burner. And I was just doing what I needed to do to get by. And at the time I didn't know that was actually making things worse. That by going to junk food, I was actually like making myself more prone to mood imbalances, more stressed out. I was getting more bloated. I was gaining more weight, which made me feel really crappy. And then when my daughter, she turned 1 year old and we're having her first birthday party, and I got dressed for that party, I put on my full term maternity clothes, which I've been wearing all along. And that to me was that was my wake up call. I know people carry baby weight for 18, 25 years sometimes, right? But that wasn't okay for me. And that for me was a breaking point where I said, okay, enough. I've got to figure this out. There must be a better way. I know there's a better way. I know what to do already, but I'm just not doing it. So what the heck is going on? And that's what led me down a different path where I started to take a look at the whole picture and not just obsess about my food and not just try to grit my way through forcing myself to eat the salads instead of the ice cream and the candy that was really calling my name, even if it was vegan. So I'd also become an ethical vegan along that journey. And as we all know, there's plenty of vegan junk food out there just waiting, right? Waiting for you to come upon it. So I think that the really big wake up call for me, even if we talk just about the food, is that I thought it was whole food plant-based way back when I was doing forks over knives and I was doing all the things that I first learned. And it wasn't until later that I realized all the vegan junk food and even some of the not so junky food like the bread and the pasta and we'll call the middle of the road things like that I was eating frequently. I didn't really solve everything until I became whole food plant-based and not just plant-based. And I started to take that definition very seriously. And then later, as I started to embark upon my own coaching program and teaching people, that's, two of the fundamental things that I teach. One is this plants target system that I'd be happy to explain. And then the other is there's a difference between plant-based and whole food plant-based. And a lot of people don't really see like the results that you see in the magazines and on Facebook and all the wonderful weight loss transformation stories. A lot of them don't really have a happy ending until they're truly whole food plant-based. And that's where you reach the point where it's easier and simpler, I think, to follow and more successful. So there's my really short, long-winded story.
Wow, it's amazing what you've done, Kristen. And I invite people to write questions here in the chat box. But you mentioned something that you devised, you created, and
Yeah.
I am not very familiar with it. So
Yeah.
I am excited to learn about the the plant. The target training
Yeah.
that you have. So go ahead and tell us if you think this is the right time
Yeah,
to do it.
for sure. Oh, I'd be happy to. Absolutely. Okay. So this actually was inspired. I can't take full credit for it, but Dr. Lyle, author of The Pleasure Trap, and you know him well. I'm sure your followers know him well too. I've learned so much from him and so many others in the plant-based movement. And one of the things that I learned from him that really, really stuck with me was this idea of building self-esteem by having a little itty bitty goal and then being able to mark that off and counting yourself successful. Okay. So he sort of talks about how just the littlest things that we do help us to feel successful. And then once we feel successful, we sort of get a pat on the back from that inner critic, if you will. And then we feel like we're doing a good job, and then we're more inclined to continue. So when you embrace this concept, it makes it a lot easier to get started because you bring your focus in very narrow and you keep it very targeted. Okay. And so he created, I think with Dr. McDougall, I'm not sure. I think Dr. Lyle created it for Dr. McDougall's program, this concept of starch targets. And when I heard it, I really, really liked it, but I also felt like something was missing from it. And so I wanted to sort of take that concept and use it as a way to implement in my program the full lifestyle. So the starch targets are mainly about your food. But if we only focus on food, then we're missing some of the other components that can actually make it work. And to me, this is what makes it easier for people to implement. And when we only focus on food, then we're missing and often neglecting these other pieces of our lifestyle. And when we can address those, then it actually makes the following the food part of it a lot easier. Okay, so it's going to go in full circle here. So I use the concept P.L.A.N.T.S targets. I came up with this acronym. So it's P.L.A.N.T.S, and each letter stands for a different thing. And the goal is to sort of achieve your target for each of the letters and to track that each day. Okay, so what each of the letters stand for, I'm going to run through it quickly and then I'll go back and explain each of them. So P is for planning ahead, and then L is for lots of healthy food. Again, I'll come back and explain what each of these mean. A is for activity. N is for nice, as in being a nice person. T is for thankful. And then S is for sleep. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the beginning. So P for plan ahead. And this is really focused on the food, but it's also about figuring out how to get these other goals met. Okay, so planning ahead is just taking a little bit of time to think through your meals for that day or for the week. If you want to do a week at a time, I recommend it, but you don't have to do it that way. And it's also really for when you're going outside of your regular environment. Okay, so if you're working, if you're at home or working from home or what have you, and you kind of are in your groove there, but then your friends invite you to a restaurant and you're like, oh, I don't know how to do this, and I just eat whatever because it's too hard to go against the grain or what have you. So planning ahead gives you the opportunity to at least think through it. And so in the case of a restaurant, well, maybe I can pick the restaurant and I can find one that has some healthy food there that I can eat and that I want to eat. Maybe I can bring some of my own food. Maybe I eat a little bit before I go so I don't show up starving. I'm not going to go to somebody's Super Bowl party where there's going to be this buffet of junk food and expect to just show up and eat healthy without planning ahead. Okay, so that's P for planning ahead, is just putting a little bit of thought into it. And this is not to say that you have to be perfect every time you leave the house and just stay on your plan no matter what happens. But if you want to, and if you get thrown off by some of these social events, then planning ahead and having a goal in mind is going to make it far more successful. All right. So L for lots of healthy food. Now this one could be a whole course in itself because this is really about the food. And for the purposes here, I'm just going to sum it up with what I was referring to with being whole food plant-based. Okay. So we want to make sure we're eating food that includes fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, and depending on your diabetes status and heart disease and your weight control, we're going to be adding a little bit of nuts and seeds. Okay, so these things are all nutrients that we need, and you don't even have to understand like every nutritional journal article that's ever been written to eat healthy. If you can understand the food groups to eat from, and you can eat lots of them, then you're going to be successful. Okay, obviously I explain this more in my program in details, but the L for this is for lots of healthy food. A lot of times I've seen people who went vegan or they went whole food plant-based and they're like, okay, I can eat carrots and celery sticks, got it. And they try to restrict their portions, and now they're eating 300 calories a day. And they might lose weight, but they're not getting a well-balanced diet, and it's definitely not sustainable. And it's not any fun either, by the way. Like, that's just miserable to be starving yourself. So the L is a reminder on purpose. It works for the acronym, which is helpful, but it also is a reminder to eat lots of that healthy food that we want to get in there. All right, now A for activity. I use that letter because it's important to just live an active life, more so than just going to the gym for 45 minutes or 3 hours and whatever, how many times a week you do it, but then you come home and you're sedentary for the other 23 hours in a day. And so many of us are, working at a desk, or we're working or driving a car or a truck or something like that, and we're in it all the time. And so we're not getting up and moving around the way that our ancestors would have in a regular day. So the A for activity is a reminder to get in movement all throughout the day. And I'm a fan of going to the gym too. But you can do both. I think a lot of times we get that exercise in and we check it off when we forget about how much of the rest of the day we're actually spent sitting. So that's just a good reminder to kind of mix it up and get up and move around throughout the day. So the N, all right, so we did P, L, and A. Now we're on N, is for nice, as in being a nice person. And this is a funny one. Sometimes people are like, why is this in my daily plan? It's because you feel better when you are a nice person. And so this is a reminder to keep perspective, and to have compassion for other people. A lot of times we, especially in the vegan movement, we find people who are really, what's the word? Active and committed and dedicated to helping animals, and compassion for animals is king, and that's wonderful. I'm a huge believer in that. And sometimes we focus all our energy there, and then we can be a jerk to the people that we really love, or to the cashier that's helping you. They're having a bad day and you're just kind of snarky with them about it or something, right? And so it's not just nice to be a nice person, but you actually release hormones in your brain and in your body when you do things for other people. So when you hug somebody, you get a release of, I believe it's oxytocin, and that helps you to feel better. So when we're going about the world on default, and we're just sort of reacting to the things around us, and maybe not reacting in the nicest ways, then we're missing out on some of those happy hormones. And you probably know, if you've been in this plant-based movement for a while, that we need to get our dopamine from somewhere. And if you've gotten to the point where you're eating a lot of junk food, or you're overeating on junk food, or you're indulging all the time because that's where you get your treats, then that leads you to it's a setup for being overweight and obese and having these medical problems. So if we don't have to rely on our food for joy, for comfort, for happiness, and for love, how many times is food an expression of love? And if you're using that as your main source of those feel-good hormones, then you're in trouble. So N for nice is a critical, important part of a healthy lifestyle, because it allows you to get those feel-good hormones from somewhere else, and you don't need to get it from your food anymore. Okay, so, and then T for thankful is very much along the same lines. It's a reminder to live in gratitude. And so every day, whether it's at the beginning or the end or both, then again, you don't have to choose between these things. Everyone thinks you have to choose, but you can do both, morning and evening, and all throughout the day. Find things to be thankful for. Really look for them. And when you're looking for them, you see more of them. And if we're just kind of going through life on default and we just see all this stuff happening to us, and we lose the perspective of, well, actually, there's a gift in that. Or actually, it's kind of, that worked out. I didn't think it would work out well, but that actually worked out better than I thought it would. Or just to be thankful for the simple things, like waking up in the morning, or being able to walk. How many times do you complain about walking? And yet there's people living in wheelchairs that don't even have any legs. So when you can remember what you have already and let that allow that to help you to feel good and enjoy it, first of all, it gives you the motivation to want more, right? So if you can appreciate walking, then you're going to walk more, and you're going to go and you're going to enjoy it. And if you're going to enjoy it, maybe you'll invite friends. And if you have more fun, you're going to walk more often. And what happens if you exercise more often? You're going to be approaching your health goals much quicker. Okay. So all of these things work synergistically to help you feel better so that you make great decisions that feed your whole body and feed your whole life. And then last but not least, we're at the S, which is for sleep. You probably all know this, but if you don't, let me just give you the brief overview. You gotta sleep. It's the only time that your body has a chance to rest and restore. And especially now when we're in this like crisis, it feels like crisis mode all the time, right? I mean, this year has just been full of it, right? And you're just living from one crisis to the next, it seems, whether it's in your own home or on the news or globally. And we take that in and we experience that. And then where does it go? It's literally in you, in your body, and can manifest as disease and overweight. And so if you want to give your body the best chance of healing, you must make yourself sleep. You must have the opportunity to let yourself restore and relax. That the cortisol that builds up from living in fight or flight is largely, it has so many negative ramifications, but not the least of which is creating this belly fat that we all complain about is also really dangerous. So when you're giving yourself a chance to let your cortisol come down, either through sleep or things like restorative yoga and meditation, there's other things you can do too, of course, then you're giving yourself the best chance of being healthy and succeeding. And so the idea of these P.L.A.N.T.S targets is also to zero in your focus so that it can be straightforward and tangible. So many times we hear, like, I mean, I always look over here because I have this shelf full of plant-based books, nutrition books, medical books, like you name it, self-help books, all of it. And it can be daunting, right? Because you read this, you learn about that, you've got, 18 things you're supposed to be doing. And then, well, what about, I thought red peppers are better than green peppers, and this recipe only has green peppers. Am I supposed to swap? I don't know. What should I do? Right? So I work with people all the time. And they're like, well, I thought I had to worry about this and that and the other thing. And in doing that, they're giving up and they're just getting pizza or McDonald's because they can't figure out all the complexities of the whole food plant-based diet. Okay. So my goal, my mission is to help simplify things so that you don't have to make it that complicated. And if you can just focus on these P.L.A.N.T.S targets, you can like reel in your thoughts and say, okay, every day, these are 6 things I want to focus on. These 6 things throughout the day, not all at once, but all throughout the day. And you actually keep track of it. So you actually write down, make a checklist for all your targets, and then you start to check them off. And we're not trying to do 100% of them. We're shooting for 80% success. So we want to get 80% of our targets through it on average by the end of the week. And in case this is a little bit complicated, I went ahead and created a PDF that you can download, and Gustavo can go ahead and post it so that you have the opportunity to just have this checklist made for you. All you have to do is show up. So you can just download it, print it out, and then you'll have the opportunity to remind yourself all throughout the day. There's 2 weeks worth on the handout that you can see. And then you'll have the opportunity to keep track of what's going on. And it's that keeping track that's really important. So if you hear me say this today and you're like, oh yeah, I got to do all those things, I'll remember plants. You won't. I promise you won't. So it's crucial to have it written down in a way that you can have a visual reminder, like hang it on your fridge, so that every time you're going to eat, you have this sort of reminder there. Hang it by your bed if that's better, in your bathroom mirror, so you're in there several times a day. Whatever works for you is fine. There's no wrong way to do it. But do keep track of it so that you can just have the best chance of success.
Christian, I really appreciate when you made the difference between just a plant-based diet, which is good, of course, and then a
Yes.
whole food. Because the other day I was making applesauce. I don't eat applesauce, but I every now and then I use it for recipes to replace an egg,
Yeah.
for example. And the other day I used 2 apples, and I didn't realize really that these 2 apples came out to be only half a cup
Right.
of applesauce. And I thought, there it is, whole
Yeah.
food. It's not that applesauce is bad for you or
Right.
unhealthy, but I could eat that half a cup in like that. But eating
Yeah.
2 apples with all the fiber intact and the water and everything else,
Yes.
it will fill you up more. And let's not
Yes.
even talk about dry apple. You can eat probably 10 apples that way.
Exactly.
So
Or
thank
apple
you.
juice.
Or apple
Right?
juice.
And all the
These
sugar
things
that you get from apple juice without all the fiber that it's supposed to be packed with. You could put away like 6 or 7 apples in juice form easily. I mean,
Oh,
that's just getting started, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah. It's
Someone
a big
had someone had a question. I don't know if you would like to do a few
Sure, I'd
uh,
love to. I'd be happy to.
Q&A. All right. So Lisa says, vegan junk food is such a problem for me. How long does it take for the cravings to go away following the plant's target?
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So the thing with cravings, there's multiple ways to do it. And I always sort of come back to smoking as an analogy, because you can quit smoking, right? I hate to use the term cold turkey. I got to come up with a better way. I hate to pull the turkeys in there, but you can quit smoking cold turkey and your cravings for nicotine dissipate largely within the first 48 hours to 72 hours. Now, you'll have some lingering cravings past that. Now, what happens if you don't go cold turkey, but instead you just cut down, right? And then, rather than a pack a day, you're doing half a pack a day. And so all throughout the day, you're getting sort of another hit of nicotine, another hit of nicotine, another hit of nicotine. That's preventing you from going through that uncomfortable withdrawal. So sometimes that's more comfortable, but you're also perpetuating the craving for it. Okay. And it's the same with our food. So if you just sort of rip the Band-Aid off and you go straight to whole food plant-based, which means you're doing all the, the fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, the starches in their whole form, not the flour versions, not the fried things, not the crackers and the processed foods. When you do that, your cravings will dissipate largely in the first 3 days. Now, those first 3 days can sometimes be uncomfortable, just like quitting smoking, right? Picture a smoker, and this is a perfect example. Somebody quits smoking, and all of a sudden, all that gunk that they've got built up in their lungs, where does it have to go? It comes out. So all of a sudden, they're coughing more than ever. And if they don't know better, if they don't know to expect that, they stop smoking, they start coughing more, and they're like, whoa, my body feels better when I'm smoking. And they light up again. And the same thing happens with your food. So when you switch to a lot of fiber, it's going to change your digestion for the better. But in the beginning, it's uncomfortable. And so, you might find you're going to the bathroom a lot. Well, it's not really because of all the healthy foods you're eating. You're getting rid of all the crappy food you used to eat. And just like the gunk in your lungs, it's going to come out. So that beginning can be a little bit uncomfortable, but it's so worth it, because once you get over that hurdle and you get through what really is a detox from processed sugar and all the other ingredients that are kind of messing with your system. Once you get through that detox, you can feel so much better. So using the plants targets, your L for lots of healthy food would imply you go straight to the strictly whole food plant-based diet from the get-go. Now, you don't have to. There's other ways to go about doing it. You can take it slow and steady. So you can cut back just like the half a pack a day. That's far better than the pack a day, right? So any change you make in that direction is beneficial, and I encourage it. There's no right way to do it. It's just what's right for you and what's most likely to work for you. So you kind of have to pick whether you're going to go all in or you want to sort of cut back systematically, or sort of baby step into the changes. Any way is perfect. But from a cravings perspective, you'll get through the cravings faster and actually be rid of them much faster if you just go all in.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So we have one more question here from Maya that says, thank you. You have a wonderful way of describing things in the clearest and most relaxing way. I think the problem with this lifestyle is the constant struggle it puts you in, or maybe it's just me, she says. Do you have any suggestions how to ease all the pressure to achieve all these plans goals?
Okay.
I'm not sure exactly what the pressure or the struggle is. Maybe it's knowing that you have to eat this and that and that. But you mentioned it, that just eat lots of healthy food.
Yes.
No, you go.
Yes. And if the person asking the question wants to follow up with more clarification about what the specific struggle is, I'd be happy to come back to that too. So the first thing is these plants targets are customizable. Okay. So don't take it so loosey-goosey that they don't mean anything. But let's just take A for activity, for example. Everybody's starting here in a different place, right? So there's people watching this who might have a hard time walking up a flight of stairs. There's people who might have a hard time walking to their mailbox right now. There's also people who can do a 15-mile bike ride tomorrow, or they're marathon runners, right? So there's a huge spectrum. So when I say A for activity, I don't have any specific goal, like you must do this in order to earn your A. So this is where you get to take some creative license, but my recommendation would be to define what that is for you, okay? So let's just say, for example, you're having a hard time walking to the mailbox, okay, without being out of breath, right? And so maybe your A for this first week is just getting up and making steps around your house, right? Doing one loop around your house and then taking a break, like inside your house, I mean. And then maybe next week your A changes to a slightly more challenging goal. Maybe now you do 2 loops, okay? If that's easy for you, then you're doing a lap around the block. Your A is a lap around the block. And if you're doing that a few times throughout the day, that's amazing, right? And it's probably a lot more than you're doing now. So the idea would be to sort of quantify what it is that you're able to do and stretch your limit just a little. Do that for the first week. And then the next week, we just kind of increase it a little bit. So you're always just trying to do like a little bit better than you did yesterday. And this is where the plants targets actually offer a lot of freedom, because it doesn't have to be any set thing. And for a long time for me, I was working on restorative yoga, and I was trying to get an opportunity in, and I was having a really hard time getting to a yoga class. And the whole process would take me about 2.5 hours between getting ready, driving, attending class, driving home, transitioning back to home. And so I wouldn't do it. Well, then I decided to make my A for that time period. My A was 5 minutes of restorative yoga. And if I could do 5 minutes of restorative yoga, I got my A for the day. And guess what happened? It wasn't long before I felt good, because by checking that box, I'm getting that pat on the back, like, okay, this is a good thing. And of course, it's better than doing nothing. And as soon as I started to do that, I started to get my check mark. I was meeting my targets. I felt better. And as soon as I felt better, I started doing it more and wanted to do it more. And it's self-rewarding. Okay. So I hope that that sort of takes away a little bit of the struggle. And then from the food aspect, in the sense that you can customize it however you need to. You get to define, what your goal is that you want to meet in order to earn your check. Okay. And then with the food, yeah, just like Gustavo said, we're just eating lots of healthy food. So if you're brand new to this, maybe your L for the day is eating a salad. And if you get a salad in that day, then you get your check mark. If you've been at this for a while, but you've gotten away from salads, then salad's your check mark too. That's fine. If you've been at this for a while and you eat salad every day and your meals are really good and you're doing all these things, but you have some flour products in your diet that you'd like to move away from, then maybe you don't get your L unless you've avoided flour for the day and you're truly whole food plant-based. Okay. So we're in every target, basically, we're on a spectrum of change and everybody's at their own place. So this is how we can meet you wherever you are. And then you just sort of keep upping the ante as you get stronger and more comfortable. And I think the most important thing is just to be honest about it. If you're hitting 100% of your targets every single day, then it's time to change it, right? Something's too easy for you and it's just the way that you're interpreting it. So we just make it a little bit more challenging. The reason we say 80%, this comes back to a Dr. Lyle recommendation, is we don't want the bar set so high that we feel like we can't even get there. And so we just give up, right? So we want to set the bar at a moderate place where if we get 80%, we're happy about it. We're not like, oh man, I was supposed to get 100, I only got 80. What's Kristen going to say, right? So we're shooting for 80%. And when you get your 80%, you're doing the happy dance. In fact, when you get 65 or 70%, you're still doing the happy dance because you're making progress and moving in that direction.
Right, right. And I think that a lot of people, well, including me, when I started 7 years ago, the idea to give up something like, well, I see here people typing things about bread or vegan mayo, no, I don't know, things like that. For me to think that I was never going to eat a piece of bread was going to be, tragic. So it depends where we are at. At the beginning, I ate some bread. It was the version of the bread. It was a whole wheat, all that kind of thing. But I think that idea that in many programs people preach that it is an all or nothing thing, it's hurts some people. It helps some people whose brain work that way. So we have someone here asking, do you not eat bread? I cannot imagine never having a sandwich again, or saying, is vegan butter or mayo okay? Well, maybe that depends on where you're at, but go ahead and explain.
Yes, it completely depends on where you're at. If you are at McDonald's 3 times a day, and people are, I've worked with people who are, and that's fine. That's where they started on their journey. They're not now, but we didn't start by like, no bread for you, no pasta for you, right? Like that model doesn't work. So we've got to baby step our way back in for a lot of people, right? And you might know best who you are. But we kind of have to use a good, better, best model, right? So again, if you've been at this for a while, and here's the thing, if you're meeting all your goals and your health is where you want it to be, all your numbers are perfect, you've got a lot of energy, you feel strong, you're doing everything you want to do in life, and you're being honest about that, you're not just settling for what you think is appropriate for your age, right? But you're truly enjoying the heck out of your life, you keep doing what you're doing. That's fantastic. That's the goal. But if you've been, more of the people that I work with have been plant-based for a while, and they're not quite whole food plant-based, and they don't even quite realize it right away. And when we make that switch, then all of a sudden this stubborn weight that they've been battling with, I really try not to talk about weight very much because it's not my priority. but it seems to be the priority that everybody that comes to me. So I'm happy to address it. But what happens is all of a sudden that stubborn weight that they've been battling with and it just won't move, all of a sudden starts to melt away when you make that change. So I would just sort of bounce the question back sometimes. And I say this with all the love in my heart. It is hard to imagine a life without bread, if that's something that you're really used to. For me, it's hard to imagine a life that includes any kind of disability that I can prevent. And so it really comes down to having this perspective shift about it, right? So to answer the question, I haven't had bread in probably, I don't really count, but I'm going to say it's about 6 years. And I'm a really happy person. So I will also admit the day that we'll just say the week that I was learning about the China study, I was on a trip in Alaska and we ran across another couple. Totally, it's a really fun story I won't go into today, but we ran across another couple hiking this glacier with us in Alaska, and they happened to mention they're recently vegan. So I started asking all these questions. It turns out they're not vegan. They didn't eat any oil and they didn't eat any bread. And I walked away from them like, whoa, they're crazy. Right? Because that's where I was in my journey. I'd never heard about people doing anything like they were doing. But he had just suffered a really traumatic cardiac event and almost died. So he had a lot of motivation to do whatever it was going to take to be as healthy as possible and be alive to enjoy life. And he's out there with us hiking a glacier in Alaska. So it really comes down to, what are you willing to give up in order to get what you want? And this goes both ways. I'm willing to give up bread in order to get a healthy, happy, vibrant life. To me, that's a no-brainer. Are you willing to give up a healthy, happy life in order to eat bread? And I don't say that with any judgment at all, but at the base of it, that's actually the decision that we're making. We just don't realize it. We don't think of it that way.
Right, right. Well, Christine, we wanted to keep this webinar a little bit to an hour or so. So could you tell us a little bit about now the program? Because I know that some people here would like to know more detail about your program that is called Transform You.
Yeah.
Could you just talk to us about that, and we'll close in that note?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Thank you. So I created this program called Transform You. That's an online training course to get you to the point where you easily prioritize the healthy, happy life. And when you make that decision automatically. And so in this program, I teach a little bit about food. I'll teach you how to cook. I have a wonderful assistant that does great cooking demos and everything. I teach exercise. I brought in other experts that teach exercise, and we really cover the whole thing. I also have experts that teach relationship training. I know there were some questions in advance about how do you do this lifestyle when other people really don't get it? And what do you do? How do you bring your family on board? And how do you navigate going out to restaurants when other people just aren't eating the same way? And those are some really big issues that need to be addressed in order for this to be easy and a long-term lifestyle. And so I actually have a relationship expert in the program that I've been studying with for a year, but she came in and does her own training. She's a Tony Robbins trained coach, and she's a relationship expert. So she teaches how to do all those things. Okay. And then I teach other components of it as well. Actually, Dr. Lyle teaches in the program too, and he teaches sections on self-esteem and esteem. And then everything that you've heard me talking about with the P.L.A.N.T.S targets, it's like the teeniest little, it's foundational, but it's in the video, it's probably in the program, it's probably one 15-minute video, and there's, I don't know at this point, 50 or 60 videos covering all these different things, but all with the intention of making it simple and succinct and concise so that you can take action on it. I'm also a really big fan of mindset and using that to generate your motivation. And so there's multiple trainings about that to help you get to that point where it's just an easy automatic decision. You have this, tempting treat in front of you and you don't even want it anymore because this life over here is just so tantalizing and exciting and interesting that you're going to go this path without even veering or thinking twice about what used to be a tempting treat that used to pull you off track. I actually just had a student share a really funny story yesterday. She has 6 children, and she also takes care of 2 adults with special needs, and she has to cook for all of them. And she eats whole food, plant-based, and really gets sidetracked at mealtime picking food off of other people's plates, which is really common. I know we all do it. If you're in the kitchen feeding other people, it's just in your mouth before you even realize it. And so I came up with this really fun little tool for her. And she sent me the picture the next day where she's in the kitchen with this, some people would call it gorgeous. We'll just call it a huge plate of lasagna, like a huge vat of lasagna, and a big loaf of homemade Italian bread. And she's sitting there with a huge smile on her face, drinking her green smoothie because she just made this whole meal, spent hours in the kitchen, made that for everybody else, and didn't touch any of it, which was something that she hadn't done, maybe not ever. And that came from just a little bit of training and perspective shift and a neat tool that she hadn't known to implement before. So it's fun what you can do with it. I actually offer lifetime access to Transform You because this is the kind of thing that we might need to revisit from time to time. So it should take about 3 months to work through the course the first time. And you might want to come back to it. But even aside from going back to course material, I'm always adding more content and information to it. And I also offer Facebook Live training. So I do trainings, something like this in my private Facebook group that's just for Transform You students. I do that at least once a month, and then I'm popping into the group every single day, answering questions, supporting people, just helping people along in their journey. So it's a really robust program, but I've kept it super, super affordable because I never want money to be the reason that somebody doesn't take this step and just get the help that they need. Right, to see it all the way through to success. I think there's so many people in the plant-based movement that get started, get interested, they get motivated from any number of sources. Thank goodness there's lots of sources out there that motivate people, but then they get started and find themselves knowing a lot and then not really doing it or not doing it all the way, and they get stuck, they get frustrated, and they give up. And so my hope is that anybody that wants help and wants to proceed with a plant-based lifestyle, whether they're brand stinking new. By the way, there was somebody I saw, I don't know if she's watching live, but there was somebody that I know registered who said she's 2 weeks into being vegan, which is awesome. Congratulations. I love meeting people that are brand new. So whether that's you or whether you've been at this for years and you just want to keep going with it and keep getting better and better, then that's what it's for. That's exactly, I saw this problem and that's what I created Transform You for, to help people through that.
Well, I think that so many things that you're doing in this program, but one of them is to giving people a place where they can be part of a community and have a support group, and
Yes.
to have access to you.
Yeah.
Those things are, and to have someone like you that really can present things, because that's not an easy thing, in a simple and concise way, and to take people from where they're at and not just force them into this way.
Right.
I appreciate that from your program.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. What you just reminded me, I wanted to mention too, we've just recently released an app so that all the course content is completely accessible on your mobile device. And it's not just mobile friendly, it's actually an app. I've never seen anything like it. I'm so proud of it. And we've just launched it a few weeks ago. And it is completely transforming the way that people access the information, so that you're never more than just like opening your phone and one tap away and you're in the videos. You can pause the videos, come back to them, you can pause and you can take notes on the video, so that you can refer back to that
Great.
session. I know I see there's some of my students in here commenting that the app is wonderful. They're so appreciative. You guys have no idea how lucky you are if you're new, because the app is such a game changer. People have already been seeing amazing results for the past year and a half and that program. And now it's just, I know it's going to just really catapult everybody to the next level. So if you're watching this webinar, you are actually going to be getting a free test drive of the Transform You app. So keep your eyes out for the email. The email that goes out with the replay will have access to download the Transform You app. So I'm happy to share that with everybody. And again, I wish everybody the best of success. I'm here for you. If there's anything that I can do to help you, please reach out anytime. That's what I do.
All right. Well, good. I'm so glad that now people here are going to get a second freebie, and this is coming. It's going to go out in the replay email. So, thank you again, Kristen, and all the best to you and everybody. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you next time then.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for watching.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.